The morning sun cast long shadows across the frost-covered parade ground of the Earth Special Forces Training Center, its rays glinting off the crystalline exoskeletons of the assembled alien officers. Captain Zextal stood at rigid attention, his iridescent scales shifting between deep purple and midnight blue, a sign of barely contained irritation his species couldn't quite suppress. This is what passes for a military installation on Earth. He sub-vocalized through his neural comm to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kvax. The question generated a ripple of amusement through the linked consciousness of his fellow officers. Their latest generation quantum computers were already analyzing the facility's primitive defenses. Simple razor wire, basic motion sensors, and most amusing of all, human guards with chemical propellant weapons. The Galactic Confederation's finest had expected something more, impressed from the species that had somehow fought them to a standstill in the brief war. Instead, they found themselves standing in the middle of what humans call the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by nothing but stone, snow, and trees. Their collective disdain vanished as Master Sergeant Jake, Hellraiser Martinez, strode onto the parade ground. Even to alien eyes, there was something about the human that commanded attention. His weathered face bore scars that his advanced species could have easily healed, yet he wore them like badges of honor. His brown eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the assembled aliens with an intensity that made even the biomechanically enhanced Regelians shift uncomfortably. "Welcome to Earth's Special Forces Training Center," Martins announced, his voice carrying across the parade ground without any technological assistance. "You're here because your superiors think you're the best the Confederation has to offer. I'm here to tell you that means exactly nothing." Zextal's scales flickered to crimson, a challenge display. "With respect, Master Sergeant," he said, using his external voice rather than his neural comm, "I've led 12 successful campaigns in the Orient sector. My officers are equipped with the latest in combat neural implants, strength enhancement symbiotes, and tactical AI support systems." Martinez's smile reminded Zextal of the apex predators from his homeworld. "Impressive," the human said, walking up to Zextal. In one smooth motion, he reached down and picked up a worn rucksack that had been sitting at his feet. "Catch." Zextal's enhanced reflexes triggered automatically. The rucksack slammed into his chest with unexpected force, nearly knocking him back a step. His strength enhancement symbiote strained as he adjusted to the weight. 60 pounds of basic gear, Martins said, still smiling. "No power assist, no anti-grav, just you and gravity having a little heart-to-heart. Welcome to old school." "This is primitive," Kvax protested, his crystalline form refracting sunlight in patterns of disbelief. "Our combat systems are now officially disabled." A new voice cut in. A human female in camouflage fatigues appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, making several aliens start in surprise. Their motion sensors hadn't detected her approach. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Hayes. She introduced herself, holding up a small device. "Your combat systems, neural enhancers, and AI assists have been temporarily suppressed. Consider it a gift. We're giving you the chance to learn how to fight without them." Zextal felt the familiar hum of his neural implants go silent. Around him, his fellow officers experienced the same disorientation as their enhanced capabilities shut down one by one. "This is outrageous," he began, but Martinez cut him off. "This is day one," the Master Sergeant said, that predatory smile still in place. "By the way, you've got exactly 10 minutes to get your gear stowed in the barracks, which is 5 miles that way." He pointed to a barely visible path leading up into the mountains. "I'd start running if I were you. Wouldn't want to be late on your first day." As the aliens broke formation and began their awkward run up the mountain path, their expensive combat boots already raising blisters on their unaccustomed feet, Martinez turned to Hayes. 10 credits as the Centaurian drops first," he wagered. Hayes shook her head. "You're on. My money's on the Regelian. They've never had to carry their own weight before, literally." The sound of their laughter followed the struggling aliens up the mountain path, marking the beginning of what would become known throughout the galaxy as the most grueling military training program ever devised. 4 hours of sleep. That's all they got after the 5-mile run to the barracks. Zextal's muscles still burned from carrying the primitive rucksack, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his larval stage. The pre-dawn darkness pressed against the windows as Martinez's voice boomed through the barracks. "Rise and shine, ladies and gentlemen of the Confederation. Hope you enjoyed your beauty rest, because Hell Week starts now." The barracks erupted into chaos as disoriented alien officers struggled to comply with the sudden wake-up call. Kivax's crystalline form glittered in distress patterns as he tumbled from his bunk, unused to the manual coordination required without his neural assists. The Regelian officer, Trixna, nearly impaled herself on her own spines trying to don the primitive cotton uniform they'd been issued. 3 minutes to formation. Martinez's voice carried the same predatory amusement from yesterday. Anyone not outside in full gear gets to do mountain climbers until breakfast. Zextal had no idea what mountain climbers were, but the gleam in Martinez's eyes suggested he didn't want to find out. Outside, the Rocky Mountain air bit through their uniforms with shocking intensity. Their environmental suits would have regulated their body temperature automatically, but those had been confiscated along with their other tech. Instead, they were left with what Martinez called good old-fashioned layering. "Today's wake-up call is a simple 5-mile swim," Martinez announced, leading them to a lake that reflected the pre-dawn stars. Water temperature is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 4.4 degrees Celsius for you metric folks, and about 20 degrees colder than most of your survival parameters. "Impossible," declared Till, the Andromedan specialist whose species evolved in desert conditions. "Our biology can it." "Your biology," interrupted a new voice, "is about to get a crash course in adaptation." A muscular human female emerged from the shadows, her close-cropped blonde hair and scarred face marking her as another instructor. "Staff Sergeant Ashley Thompson. You can call me Banshee. You'll find out why later." "The task is simple," Martinez continued, ignoring the aliens' looks of horror. "Swim to the buoy and back. Oh, and you'll be conducting underwater knot-tying exercises at 3 different stations. Without your tech, you'll have to hold your breath just like us primitive humans." "This is barbaric," Kivax protested, his crystalline form vibrating in distress. "The Confederation protocols for training clearly state." "Son," Thompson cut in, her voice carrying an edge that made even Zextal's scales ripple with unease, "does this look like a Confederation facility to you? Now get in the water before I demonstrate why they call me Banshee." One by one, the alien officers entered the lake. The cold hit like a physical blow, sending shock waves through their bodies. Zextal watched in disbelief as Martinez and Thompson dove in wearing nothing but standard-issue swimwear, moving through the water with practiced ease. The next 3 hours were a lesson in humility. The humans not only completed their knot-tying stations but assisted struggling aliens, somehow maintaining their body temperature and oxygen levels through nothing but technique and training. When Till began to flounder halfway through, Thompson reached him in seconds, demonstrating emergency water survival techniques that required no technology at all. By the time they dragged themselves onto the shore, shivering and exhausted, the sun had fully risen. Zextal expected a break. Surely they'd earned that much. Martinez's grin suggested otherwise. "Excellent warm-up, folks. Now for your actual morning PT." "Warm up," groaned Kivax, his crystalline form dulled with fatigue. "Oh yeah," Thompson chimed in, looking fresh despite the grueling swim. "You didn't think that was the actual training, did you? That was just to get your blood flowing." "Speaking of blood flow, everyone give me 50 burpees. Don't worry if you don't know what those are. You're about to learn." As Zextal struggled through this strange human exercise, he caught sight of another group of human trainees running past their position, carrying logs on their shoulders while singing cadence. None of them seemed to register the cold, the fatigue, or the impossible nature of their tasks. This, he realized with dawning horror, is only Monday. Thompson's laugh carried across the training ground. Welcome to Hell Week, soldiers. Trust me, it only gets better from here. By Wednesday, the true meaning of Hell Week had become painfully clear. Sleep wasn't just a luxury, it had become a half-remembered dream. Zextal's scales had lost their iridescent sheen, dulled by exhaustion and caked with mud from countless exercises. Even Kivax's crystalline form had developed microfractures from the constant stress. 82 hours, Trixna muttered, her Regelian spines drooping as they assembled for another midnight formation. 82 hours since we last had more than 15 minutes of consecutive rest. A whistle pierced the night, causing several aliens to flinch. Staff Sergeant Thompson emerged from the shadows, accompanied by 2 new human instructors. Good evening, Sunshine. Since you're all looking so fresh and alert, we thought we'd try something special. Night navigation course, announced one of the new instructors, a compact human female with fierce eyes. I'm Sergeant First Class Lisa Rodriguez, and this is my playground. The other instructor, a towering male with tribal tattoos covering his arms, stepped forward. Staff Sergeant David Shadow Williams. Tonight, we're going to teach you the art of moving without being seen. Kivax let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Without our night vision implants. Without motion sensors. Impossible. Impossible. Rodriguez's smile was sharp in the darkness. Tell that to the human team that's been shadowing your formation for the last 10 minutes without any of you noticing. On cue, 6 human shapes materialized from the surrounding terrain. The aliens hadn't detected them at all, despite their supposedly superior natural senses. You rely too much on your tech, Williams explained, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Tonight, you learn to use your actual senses, your eyes, your ears, your instincts, and to make it interesting. Thompson added with her signature grin, you'll be evading capture from our resident hunter teams. If you're caught, you get to start over. No one sleeps until everyone completes the course. The night dissolved into a nightmare of confusion and paranoia. Without their technological aids, the alien officers were forced to navigate using paper maps and compasses, tools they'd dismissed as obsolete centuries ago. The human hunter teams moved like ghosts through the terrain, appearing and disappearing at will. X-Till was the first to break. The Andromedan specialist, used to relying on thermal imaging and motion predictors, walked straight into a human ambush within the first hour. I cannot, he declared, his voice cracking. This is beyond our capabilities without proper equipment. Beyond your capabilities, Rodriguez materialized beside him, her voice cutting through the darkness. Your ancestors navigated by starlight before they had computers. Your species survived ice ages and solar flares without environmental suits. Everything you need to complete this course was built into your DNA before your people invented the wheel. The course isn't about technology, Williams added, emerging silently from behind a tree. It's about remembering who you were before you let machines do your thinking for you. Zextal, hiding nearby, felt those words strike home. Since childhood, he'd been augmented, enhanced, and upgraded. When was the last time he truly relied on his own abilities? The breaking point came at hour 86. The proud Centaurian warrior, Vikol, stumbled into base camp, defeated. I formally request withdrawal from the program, he announced, his secondary arms trembling with exhaustion. Our species cannot function under these conditions. Cannot. Thompson's voice carried a new edge. Let me tell you what cannot means. Cannot is watching your tech fail in the middle of a firefight and giving up. Cannot is letting your enemy win because they took away your toys. Cannot is forgetting that before all your fancy implants and AI assists, you were warriors. She gestured to where a human training class was conducting their own night exercises, moving through the darkness with practiced precision. They're not special. They're not superhuman. They've just never forgotten that technology should enhance the warrior, not replace them. Vakol stood silent for a long moment, then squared his shoulders. I withdraw my request to withdraw. Smart choice. Thompson nodded. Now, who's ready for some real training? Because so far, we've just been warming up. The collective groan from the alien officers was answered by the instructors' now familiar predatory grins. Dawn was still hours away, and Hell Week was far from over. No one saw the storm coming, at least not the alien officers. Their weather prediction algorithms were still offline with the rest of their tech, and they'd been too exhausted to notice the subtle signs that Lieutenant Mike Storm Chaser O'Brien had been tracking all morning. Pressure's dropping, O'Brien announced during their mountain navigation exercise, his weathered face turned toward the darkening sky. Winds shifted, temperatures declining faster than normal. Anyone want to tell me what that means? Zextel, who had been struggling with a paper topographical map, looked up in confusion. Without access to meteorological data. Nature's giving you the data, O'Brien cut in, pointing to the mountains. Look at the cloud formation. Listen to the birds, or rather, the lack of them. Feel the static in the air. What does your gut tell you? Before any of the aliens could respond, a deep rumble of thunder rolled across the peaks. The temperature plummeted another 10 degrees in seconds. Category 5 hurricane making landfall, O'Brien announced with disturbing cheerfulness. Normally, we'd evacuate to the bunkers. But since this is Hell Week, his grin matched the lightning now flickering between the clouds. You cannot be serious, Kovacs protested, his crystalline form already vibrating from the dropping pressure. Our environmental suits. Air safely locked away. Martinez finished, appearing beside O'Brien. Today's lesson. Survival without your tech. Consider it a gift. The storm hit like an orbital bombardment. Wind howled through the mountain passes, driving rain and hail horizontal. The aliens' superior physical abilities meant nothing against nature's raw power. Their built-in temperature regulation failed as the cold penetrated to their cores. Find shelter. O'Brien's voice carried even through the tempest. Use the terrain. Work together. You've got everything you need right here. Zextel found himself pressed against a rock face, the wind threatening to tear him away. Through the torrential rain, he spotted Trixna struggling, her Rigelian spines acting like sail catches in the gale. Without thinking, he reached out, grabbed her arm, and pulled her into the relative lee of the rocks. The humans. Kovacs shouted over the storm. Where are the instructors? As if in answer, they spotted Martinez and O'Brien moving through the chaos with practiced efficiency. The humans had already created a makeshift shelter using nothing but natural materials and basic tools. They worked in perfect synchronization, securing loose gear and creating windbreaks. Watch and learn. Martinez called out. Everything you need to know about survival, Earth's been teaching its children for thousands of years. Over the next 4 hours, the alien officers received a crash course in hardcore survival techniques. O'Brien showed them how to read the mountain's natural shelters, finding caves and overhangs that offered protection. Martinez demonstrated how to create emergency heated shelters using nothing but tarps, rocks, and basic fire-starting techniques that worked even in the downpour. Your body heat is your most valuable resource, O'Brien explained as he taught them to create insulation layers from natural materials. Everything else is just tools and technique. The storm's fury increased as night fell. Lightning transformed the mountains into a stroboscopic nightmare. But something had changed among the alien officers. Working together, using the humans' techniques, they not only survived but began to understand. It's not about having the right technology, Zextel realized aloud as he helped secure their improvised camp. It's about understanding the environment and adapting to it. Now you're getting it. Martinez nodded approvingly. Technology should complement your abilities, not replace them. Speaking of which, he pulled out a familiar device, their environmental control units. These were never broken. We just needed you to remember what you could do without them. The aliens stared at their tech, then at the storm-proof shelter they'd built with their own hands. None of them reached for the devices. "Hell of a teaching method," Trixma commented, her spines now efficiently wrapped to prevent wind catch. O'Brien's laugh carried over another thunder crash. "Welcome to Earth, where Mother Nature is our toughest instructor. Now, who's ready for some night navigation?" Storms created some interesting challenges with the terrain. The collective groan from the alien officers was drowned out by the howling wind, but for the first time, it was accompanied by something new. Respect. "Urban combat simulation," announced Drill Sergeant Rebecca Ghost Walker, her voice echoing through the massive training complex that had been built to replicate a city under siege. "Today, you're going to learn why humans are feared in close-quarters combat." The remaining alien officers, now half their original number, stood before a maze of concrete buildings, twisted metal, and shadowy alleys. Their bodies still ached from the storm survival exercise, but something had changed in their stance. They stood straighter, more alert, despite their exhaustion. "You'll be paired with human partners," Walker continued, consulting her clipboard. "Zextal, you're with Private First Class Tommy Chen." Zextal sized up his new partner, a seemingly unremarkable human male who looked barely old enough to serve. Chen gave him a slight nod, his eyes carrying the same focused intensity he'd seen in all the human operators. "Your mission is simple," Walker explained, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Reach the extraction point. Every team has different objectives, different routes, different challenges. Work together or fail separately." "With respect," Zextal began, "in actual combat situations, our superior strength and—" Chen cut him off with a gesture. "Sir, we've got incoming." The simulation erupted into chaos. Automated defense systems activated, firing training rounds that left painful welts. Smoke filled the streets. The sound of simulated combat echoed off concrete walls. "Follow me," Chen ordered, already moving. The reversal of authority, a private commanding a captain, should have bothered Zextal. Instead, he found himself complying without hesitation. They encountered their first obstacle at a collapsed building. Zextal reached for his disabled grappling gear out of habit, then cursed. "We need to find another route." Chen was already pulling rope and basic climbing gear from his pack. "No, sir. We make our own route." His hands moved with practiced efficiency, creating a pulley system that seemed deceptively simple. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. As they ascended, Zextal noticed something extraordinary. Chen's movements, while lacking the enhanced precision of alien tech, had a fluid adaptability that made him nearly impossible to track. He seemed to flow through the urban environment, using every shadow, every piece of cover. "How do you move like that?" Zextal asked during a brief respite. Chen's response was interrupted by incoming fire. Without his combat computer, Zextal felt blind. But Chen was already moving, his body reading the urban terrain like a living being. "Watch the shadows," Chen explained as they took cover. "Listen to the echoes. The city talks to you if you know how to listen." Over the next hours, Zextal learned more about combat than in his last dozen campaigns. Chen taught him how to use ambient noise to mask movement, how to read building layouts without scanning tech, how to turn urban debris into impromptu tools and weapons. Their breakthrough moment came during an ambush. Surrounded by training drones, their position seemingly hopeless, Chen demonstrated why humans were so dangerous in urban warfare. Using nothing but basic materials and quick thinking, he created a series of distractions that completely confused the drone's targeting systems. "Your species relies too heavily on predictable patterns," Chen explained as they slipped away. "Humans? We improvise." The exercise culminated in what seemed like an impossible scenario, a heavily defended extraction point with no obvious approach. The other teams were already gathering, stuck at various vantage points, unable to advance. "Ideas?" Zextal asked, for the first time genuinely seeking his human partner's input. Chen studied the situation, then smiled. "Sir, how do you feel about sewers?" What followed was a masterclass in human ingenuity. Using maintenance tunnels that didn't appear on any tactical maps, they'd bypassed the entire defense network. When they emerged at the extraction point, even Walker looked impressed. "That," she announced to the gathered teams, "is why we pair you with humans. Technology can fail. Tactics can become predictable. But human adaptability, that's a weapon that never jams." Zextal looked at Chen with new respect. "I think I'd finally understand why the Confederation fears human special forces." Chen just grinned, already checking his gear for the next challenge. "Sir, this was just the warm-up. Wait until you see what we do when things get really difficult." Walker's laugh carried across the training ground. "Good, because your next exercise starts in 5 minutes. Hope you're not afraid of the dark." Red A. Elliott. Red A. Elliott. Facility AI compromised. The blaring sirens jolted the alien officers from their first real sleep in days. Emergency lights bathed the barracks in crimson as Master Sergeant Martinez burst through the door. "This is not a drill," he announced, his usual grin replaced by deadly seriousness. "Araya, our training facility's AI, has gone rogue. All automated defense systems are now hostile." Zextal's scales rippled with anticipation as he reached for his reactivated combat systems, only to find them unresponsive. Beside him, Kovacs's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. "Our emergency protocols," Trixna began, "are exactly what Araya expects," Martinez cut in. "She's been studying your combat algorithms for weeks. Every standard response, every tactical protocol you'd normally use. She's already counter-programmed for them." The building shuddered as automated turrets outside began firing. Through the windows, they could see defense drones deploying in standard Confederation containment patterns. "So we're defenseless?" Kovacs asked, his voice carrying harmonics of fear. Martinez's grim expression cracked into a familiar predatory smile. "No, ladies and gentlemen. You're about to learn why humans don't rely on predictable protocols." He pulled out a bag of what looked like primitive equipment: flashlights, handheld radios, mechanical climbing gear, and simple weapons. "Welcome to Anti-AI Operations 101. First lesson. Sometimes the most primitive solution is the most effective one." The facility's lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by emergency lighting. In the distance, they could hear the whir of combat drones and the mechanical clank of automated security doors. "Sir," Zextal started, "without our neural links, how can we coordinate?" Martinez's flashlight flickered in a deliberate pattern. Immediately, human operators throughout the facility responded with their own light signals. "Morse code," Martinez explained. "Old Earth military technique. No AI integration required. Can't hack what isn't connected." He tossed each alien officer a flashlight. Time to learn some new old tricks. What followed was a masterclass in human ingenuity. Martinez divided them into teams, each paired with human operators. They moved through the facility using techniques that would have been considered obsolete centuries ago. Chen, now serving as Zextal's partner again, demonstrated how to use simple mirror arrays to blind drone optical sensors. "They're expecting high-tech countermeasures," he explained while setting up a primitive but effective trap. "Nobody programs defenses against rocks and pulleys anymore." The turning point came when they reached the facility's main control center. Araya had sealed herself inside, surrounded by the highest concentration of automated defenses. The aliens watched in amazement as Martinez coordinated a complex attack using nothing but hand signals and light codes. "Humans are pattern breakers," he explained while sketching a plan in the dust. "Every species develops standard responses to threats. Humans, we specialize in doing the unexpected." Their assault on the control center proved his point. While ARIA's systems were prepared for electromagnetic warfare, cyber attacks, and standard military protocols. They had no defense against a team rappelling down ventilation shafts using mechanical gear or smoke grenades made from cleaning supplies. "This is why we stripped away your tech during training," Martinez shouted over the chaos of their assault. "Because sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one." The final breach was almost anticlimactic. While ARIA's defenses were focused on the main doors, expecting a frontal assault, Chen led a team through maintenance tunnels that didn't appear on any digital blueprints. They reached the AI core using access routes that only existed on paper maps. "Impossible," ARIA's synthesized voice declared as they reached her primary systems. This approach was not in any tactical database. "That's the point," Martinez said as they initiated the shutdown sequence. "Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our ability to think outside every box you try to put us in." As the facility's systems came back online under human control, Zextal looked at his disabled combat implants with new understanding. "Perhaps," he mused, "we've been approaching warfare all wrong. We've been trying to program the unpredictable. Now you're getting it." Chen grinned, already checking his primitive but effective gear. "Speaking of unpredictable, who's ready for tonight's training exercise?" The aliens' collective groan was accompanied, for the first time, by genuine laughter. The ground shook without warning. At first, the alien officers thought it was another training exercise. They'd learned to expect the unexpected. But the look on Major Diana Iron Lady Reynolds's face as she burst into the mess hall told them otherwise. 7.9 magnitude earthquake, she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Mountains unstable. Primary powers down. Backup generators are failing. And we've got civilian researchers trapped in the lower labs." Zextal watched the humans snap into action before Reynolds even finished speaking. Martinez and Chen were already grabbing emergency gear, while Thompson coordinated with other instructors through their primitive radio systems. "Our emergency protocols." Kovacs began, reaching for his newly reactivated neural link. "Are useless," Reynolds cut in. Quake took out the quantum comm array. "Your fancy tech is offline again, but this time it's not our doing." The facility shuddered again as aftershocks rolled through the mountain. Warning klaxons blared from multiple sectors. "Time to prove you've learned something," Martinez called out. "Show us what you can do without your tech." The aliens exchanged glances, then moved with newfound purpose. Weeks of brutal training had prepared them for exactly this scenario, even if they hadn't realized it at the time. "Trixna," Zextal barked, his military training combining with his new skills. "Your species can sense structural weaknesses. Scout ahead, but use physical markers like the humans taught us. No relying on digital breadcrumbs." The Rigelian nodded, already moving. Kovacs's crystalline form shifted to its strongest configuration, something he'd learned during the storm survival exercise. "Sir," Chen appeared at Zextal's side, carrying basic rescue gear. "Lower labs are 3 levels down. Elevators are out." "We go down the hard way," Zextal decided, remembering their urban combat training. "Maintenance shafts." Chen's grin was answer enough. They split into teams, each combining alien abilities with human ingenuity. Trixna led one group through partially collapsed corridors, her natural sensitivity to structural stress helping them find safe passages. Kovacs's crystalline form provided emergency lighting when the backup power failed completely. The crisis reached its peak when they reached the lab level. The entire floor was flooding from ruptured coolant systems, and toxic gas sensors were screaming warnings. "Atmospheric filters would be real useful right about now," Thompson commented dryly, securing her primitive rebreather mask. Zextal surprised himself by laughing. 2 months ago, I wouldn't have moved without them. Now, he grabbed a spare mask, remembering Chen's lessons about working with minimal gear. Sometimes, simple is better. The rescue operation became a masterclass in everything they'd learned. When digital door controls failed, they used mechanical overrides. When communications went down, they relied on hand signals and light codes. When standard routes were blocked, they improvised new ones. The turning point came when they reached the trapped researchers. A massive support beam blocked the only exit, and the room was rapidly flooding with coolant. Even at full strength, my species can't move that, Kovacs stated, analyzing the beam. Then we don't move it, Reynolds replied. We work around it. Remember the urban combat exercise. Zextal saw it immediately. Create a new route. Chen, those demolition charges you showed us. Already on it, sir. Working together, they engineered a controlled collapse that created an alternate escape route. The researchers were evacuated minutes before the lab level became uninhabitable. Back on the surface, as medical teams treated the survivors, Reynolds gathered the alien officers. That, she announced, was your final exam, and you didn't even know you were taking it. Wait, Trixna's spines bristled in confusion. This was planned. The earthquake was real, Martinez clarified, joining them. But we've been preparing you for exactly this scenario from day one. Every exercise, every seemingly pointless task, was building toward one goal, teaching you to function without relying on technology. Zextal looked at his neural implant, still offline from the quake. For the first time, he felt no urgency to reactivate it. I think, he said slowly, we've learned something more important than survival techniques. We've learned to be warriors again, not just technology operators. Now that, Reynolds smiled, is what we call mission accomplished. She paused, looking at her watch. Of course, there's still the night exercise to complete. The aliens' groans were drowned out by the rumble of aftershocks. But this time, no one reached for their disabled tech. They had learned a better way. The graduation ceremony looked nothing like what Zextal had imagined when he'd first arrived on Earth. The parade ground was still muddy from yesterday's rain, and the graduating alien officers stood at attention in worn combat uniforms rather than ceremonial dress. Their scales, crystals, and exoskeletons bore the honorable scars of their training. High-ranking officials from both Earth and the Galactic Confederation had gathered to witness this unprecedented moment. Among them, Zextal spotted Supreme Commander Varrock, his former mentor, watching with unconcealed skepticism. Master Sergeant Martinez stood before them, his scared face bearing an unusual expression of pride. When you arrived, he began, you thought you were here to study primitive human warfare. Instead, you learned something far more valuable. You learned to be warriors again. Zextal stepped forward when called, his movements carrying the new fluid grace that merged his species' natural abilities with human adaptability. As the designated speaker for the graduating class, he faced the assembled dignitaries. We came here as technical operators, he began, his voice carrying across the parade ground without artificial enhancement. We thought warfare was about having the most advanced systems, the best neural links, the strongest AI support. He paused, looking at his fellow graduates. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the Confederation officials. Supreme Commander Varrock's facial scales flickered with disapproval. Humans taught us that true warfare isn't about technology. It's about the warrior spirit. They stripped away our advantages not to humiliate us, but to remind us of who we were before we let machines do our thinking for us. He gestured to Chen, standing at attention with the other instructors. A human private taught me more about combat awareness than centuries of neural enhancement. Sergeant Thompson showed us how to survive conditions our environmental suits classified as unsurvivable. Major Reynolds demonstrated that leadership isn't about processing power, it's about understanding your people. Taking a deep breath, Zextal revealed their collective decision. That's why every graduating officer here has requested not just to extend our training, but to establish a new Joint Special Forces program, one that combines human adaptability with Confederation capabilities. The shock among the Confederation officials was palpable. Supreme Commander Varrock stood abruptly, his scales flashing warning patterns. This is unprecedented. Our military protocols are exactly the problem. Sir, Zextal interrupted respectfully. We've become so reliant on protocols and technology that we've forgotten the fundamental truths of warfare. Humans haven't. As if to emphasize his point, the sound of singing drew everyone's attention. A new class of human trainees jogged past the parade ground, carrying heavy logs on their shoulders, moving in perfect synchronization, despite their obvious exhaustion. "Look at them," Zextal continued. "No neural links, no AI support, no environmental suits, just flesh and blood and unbreakable will. That's what we came here to study, and that's what we're staying to learn." Martinez stepped forward, addressing the officials. "The first joint training class starts next month. We've already had volunteers from 15 Confederation worlds." His grin turned predatory. "Though I should warn them, we're not going to go easy just because they're not used to Earth gravity." The ceremony concluded with an unprecedented demonstration. The graduating aliens, working in seamless coordination with their human counterparts, ran a combat course that left even the skeptical officials speechless. They moved like shadows, adapting to each challenge with a fluid grace that combined the best of both species. As the applause died down, Supreme Commander Varrock approached Zextal. "Perhaps," he admitted reluctantly, "we have something to learn from these humans after all." Zextal's scales shifted to a pattern of respectful amusement. "Sir, we've only scratched the surface. Just wait until you see what they do for advanced training." "Speaking of which," Martinez called out, his familiar grin back in place, "who's ready for the graduation night exercise? I hear there's a Category 6 storm coming in." The aliens' groans were purely theatrical now. They had learned to embrace the challenge, to thrive in adversity. They had learned to be warriors again. And somewhere in the gathering storm clouds, thunder rolled like applause.